I'm Dr. Jordin Wiggins, and this is the Pleasure Principles podcast. Join me on this journey where sex, science, and sensuality meet. Let's change the conversation around sex and pleasure together. Welcome to part 2 of my conversation with Rainier Wild. If you haven't done it already, I highly recommend you go back and listen to part 1 of this series from last week. This beautiful conversation comes exclusively from a retreat that I host with my feminine mentorship women. It's an elite year-long commitment to fulfilling your deepest desires and letting go of the controlling, editing, overthinking, overgiving, overdoing that we are so conditioned to do. And it's holding us back from having the love, sex, and relationships that we want. Rainier is an experienced teacher, writer, and speaker. He's managed a Fortune 500 company and built businesses. He's also elegantly blown them up, burned them down, and started over from scratch. He holds a master's degree in psychology and has spent countless hours working with men and women in navigating the human soul. Through the various positions he has held, he has discovered that life must be claimed to hold any worth. His work is to inspire others to live fully, deeply in the here and now. So if you've had success with your clients, your patients in the boardroom and not the bedroom, this conversation is for you. If you've ever felt lost, empty, disconnected from your creativity, exhausted, overwhelmed from doing it all, then the feminine mentorship is your lifeline. It's your connection back to yourself, back to community, female friendships, healing relationships, and getting more by doing less. Yes, that is possible. We just need to work on the conditioning that told you that you have to do it all, work hard to be worthy, earn love, because the tools that have made you successful at work, such as being a badass at organizing and planning for everyone in your life, are not the same tools that you need to succeed in sex, love, and relationships. This is where this episode comes in, talking about the beautiful balance we need to be our best, to thrive in relationships, and why it is so elusive. Like I asked for in part 1, I want you to stop and listen to this one. Do nothing else but listen. Don't make dinner, send emails, fold the laundry. It can all wait. If you feel like everything's going to fall apart, if you stop doing, I really want you to lean into this one. I want you to use this as a practice like I would teach the ladies in the mentorship. Let's be present and create some space. If that's hard for you, well, then you are exactly who I'm speaking to. We need you to stop running from all the good that's trying to reach you and enjoy.
Now, here's the other side. We've all been in those homes where the sink is piled with dishes. Maybe we've been in those homes before. And I remember I was a community mental health specialist at one point in time, and I remember walking into a house, and the sink, it was like 3 weeks worth of dishes were in the sink, and I just casually said, "Wow, is anybody going to get to the dishes anytime soon?" I kind of said that, and the guy says, "Well, I'm sure not. It was her job, and until she does it, they're not going to be done." Now, I have heard other people do that. What do they do? It's reciprocal relating bullshit, right? Like, I'm not going to make a move until they make a move. Like, hey, guess what? The dishes actually need to get done. It really doesn't matter who does them. They need to be attended to. So what I want to say on the other side is, in relationship, we do things. We literally do things in order to make the relationship work. We have to. But what I would say is that doesn't come from a place of sacrificing myself. That comes from a place of deep surrender, right? To doing the next necessary thing. I do it because I wish to. I'm tired of those stinking dishes. I don't care if I get a single bit of thanks for them. The dishes need to be done. You know, I hear a lot of people say things like, "Oh, I'm just so mad. He didn't see the or care for the card I made him." Well, did you enjoy making it? Well, yeah, but he didn't appreciate it fully. Did you do it to be appreciated, or did you do it because you wanted to? Right. A lot of times we're doing things just to get a response. So one of the ways we can not self-sacrifice, but step into a place of deep surrender to life, is we can actually own our own desires fully and act out of those fully. Then when we're not met on the other side, it wasn't that we self-sacrificed. It was actually that we gave of ourselves to the degree to which we desired.
There's so many things that I want to say. We talk about desire work all the time and what's the true desire. But yeah, are you giving in order to receive, in attempt to like help or fix, and as a form of control, which is all really fear-based, and we can't get to surrender if we're coming from fear. Where I see myself and the lovely ladies on this call get stuck a lot is surrender versus submit. And I think they feel very different. So if it's that mountain of dishes and you're like, ugh, I'll do it. And it's almost like we're submitting to the generations of women that had to do the dishes and that kind of thing, versus, is this a desire for me to clean them up because they stink and I don't like looking at them and I'm doing it for me? I think we get stuck.
Well, conversely, I would say if you're the one who's always being the generous roommate doing the dishes, you should probably confront your roommate at some point in time too. Right? At some point, we have to be good roommates to one another. It's not just about love and romance. And I really do think that's kind of part of it. Like, we have to have very practical conversations with the people we're involved with, right? Like, hey, letting you know, I have a career. I'm also the one who's always making the meals, also always picking up the kids, also, getting up with them in the night. And I'm just letting you know that is what it is. It's been what it's been, and that no longer works for me. So we're going to have to renegotiate our terms of service here.
And if we could go into relationship expecting that renegotiations happen, I think it would just be better for everyone involved, because we kind of get stuck in these rigid roles, and what worked a year ago, 2 years ago, 6 months ago, last week might not work today.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, we go into these without having negotiations and without having any agreements, and have simply downloaded default agreements from whatever system that was dominant in our minds growing up, right? I always kind of one moment that I'm always trying to write about, and I haven't gotten the right words, and if you follow me, you'll see it when I get it right, is a moment where a wonderful woman that I was dating, our relationship was on the rocks. And God, I don't exactly remember why it was. It was probably a muddle of things. But I remember I came home. We were living together off and I came back to our place, and she was making like this lavish meal, like this really large meal. And she was like, "Oh my God, I'm making the lasagna." And I said, "The lasagna?" And she said, "Oh, it's the lasagna my mother made my father when he would get angry." Right. And I remember feeling embarrassed for her. I actually felt embarrassed because I literally was watching very nakedly the programming play out. It was like it was like she had let her slip show, like, oh, I see what's underneath here. And it's like the programming, how obvious that programming, this is what I do. This is what my mother did. Maybe this is what her mother did. Right. And I do those same kinds of things where we're just burning off our generational karma, so to speak. And we do those things so naturally. And so I think that we have to really give each other a certain level of generosity too, knowing that that's actually what's happening. And that if we're not very proactive in defining our agreements, we will simply continually be playing out those old agreements. Recently, I stumbled on, if it's okay to say, I stumbled on an analogy that has really kind of worked for me. This is when you have two people who are very committed to the great conversation and the work. Like my partner and I are like, we'll be out on a dance floor and like everyone's dancing and we're like talking about attachment styles and like analyzing everyone based on their body movement. Like this is what we do for fun. And one day we were just sitting around like thinking up different analogies for relationships. And we realized that for most of our experience and many of the people we knew, relationships were kind of like building a fortress, right? And you wanted to build the fortress with the best bricks possible. And the bricks are like agreements. You have small agreements, you have very, very large agreements. Like for instance, the cornerstone is like fidelity for most couples, right? Like they must be faithful. And that's a very, very big, large brick. That's got to be in place. And then like there's small ones though, like he promised to understand me. I heard one woman say, you know, he promised he would understand me. Now I would think that we would understand that's a very small brick. Like the ability for that to hold a lot of weight might not be so great, but a brick nonetheless. And we have a wide range of bricks, like, you know, and you can kind of probably populate that in your own mind, the agreements you knew that you made, but you're building a fortress. And that fortress is so secure, it keeps everybody out, right? Like it's just yours. You'll feel safe there. You'll feel secure. The barbarians are at the gates, but they'll never get through. The only problem is when you start to pull those bricks out, depending on the brick, the whole fortress comes down. Then you have to go build a new fortress with somebody else who has more secure bricks, right? A better analogy is my kid's trampoline that's sitting right outside. All the kids will run down the hill and they'll dogpile on our trampoline, and suddenly they're jumping like above the netting. They're going, and you know, it's like your parents' heart as well as like your homeowner's policy heart is just like dropping into your stomach, and you're like, oh dear God, nobody better break an arm here. There's an inherent amount of risk in that trampoline. Danger is what that trampoline says. You know what else it says? Delight. Delight. My kids will spend hours on that trampoline, and not just jumping, by the way. They'll also just lay there under the stars. It doesn't have to be frantic. It can also just be still and wonderful. Now, here's the thing. If bricks in that fortress are like agreements, in the trampoline, springs are like agreements. They're bendable, they're flexible. When one falls out, the relationship's not over. You've got so many other springs that are able to support you and hold you. And when one rusts, you can actually, like when it no longer applies, you can actually replace it with a new one, right? You can invite other friends to play on it. In fact, people will come and go on that trampoline. Like it's not just like hiding out like in a fortress. Instead, it becomes a place where you're able to meet others and be met. Yeah, there's risk. And by the way, there's risk in that fortress, right? That fortress is not as safe as it lets on, because again, everything ends. But with the trampoline, we go, it's dangerous, but God, it's delightful. I like that analogy better.
I do too. The rigidity of the bricks, and it makes sense, but that, you know, fidelity. What if someone is unfaithful? What if someone wants to open the relationship? And if that was a big brick and the whole thing crumbles, then you are stuck at square one. And we see so many relationships end up there. Whereas if we adopted a more fluid trampoline spring-like application to our roles, relationships, then we'd all be so much better off. In interestingly, we did this. Like, what are our, on the session before this call was about roles and like, what are our conditioned roles and what do we think the ideal is? And it was interesting to see some of the things that came up, like, oh, I want the ideal role of my partner is ABC, but really it wasn't. It's not really what we wanted or what we're saying we wanted. It's just old programming. It's like old bricks that we think we needed there.
Right. And you can, if we metaphorize it as a trampoline, we can change those out, right? They no longer apply. I love it when people say, when couples come to me like, she changed. And I'm like, really? Tell me more, right? Like, of course she did, because she's human. My God, like, did you expect her not to change? Of course she changed. How wonderful, right? How exciting. Did you not change? Oh no, we should talk about that.
Boring. that is not in my pleasure to have stagnation at all. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about sex.
Love it.
Okay, where do you see couples struggling with intimacy, like intimacy, bedroom intimacy?
I think that most sex that I know or that I've been told of by partners becomes a sort of mutual masturbation where you're using the other person to get off.
We
Right.
call it in my work masturbating with a vagina.
It's exactly it. And I think whenever I hear people like lean in and they get real quiet about it, they're like, oh, we were together, but like I was just elsewhere. Like I just went somewhere else. I think that sex, interestingly, probably, and you're the expert here, but I think that sex, I've noticed, kind of falls in a few different categories for me. There's reproductive sex, and then there's like intimate union sex, and it's like very tender and wonderful, blah blah blah. And then there's like,
Do I sense an eye roll?
well, yeah, maybe. And then there's like play, and I think at some point in life, it becomes those other things. It becomes the orgasm. But Freud used this horrible term called polymorphous perversion. And I love the concept behind polymorphous perversion. The idea is that when you have an infant, you watch them, like rub their eyes and they get pleasure, right? It's enjoyable because infants inherently do that which is enjoyable and avoid that which is not. Then they touch their bum, and that's pleasurable too. And then they touch their genitals, and that was really enjoyable also. But they didn't need to orgasm, like rubbing the eye didn't necessarily cause an orgasm. They didn't focus on that for hours, right? Neither did touching their genitals occur either that way. But by the time we hit 12 or 13, we have narrowed our focus. I am not going to be touching my eye, enjoying that as much as I'm going to touch my genitals, right? Like I know that this can produce something that is really going to have a huge dopamine payload for me. And that's what I'm going to go for, like every time. And so we lose the pleasure principle in our life. We actually lose the place of delight or play. Right. And I think that's one of the things, one of my largest concerns when I work with couples or individuals around sex. Like, when did you lose play or delight as a sexual experience? Like, when did orgasm become the thing? When did outcome become the only thing that you were rooting for here? Right. And of course, we can almost always trace that. That's what Freud called the reality principle, right? Like, hey, let's get real. We've got 15 minutes here. Let's go. It's like you're cramming in between sessions. It's like, and that's maintenance sex. That's another form of sex. Well, we just got to do it. If we don't schedule a time, it won't get done. I think we need to rediscover play. We need to rediscover delight. That doesn't always mean orgasm. sometimes that actually does mean touching the eye together. One of the most intimate moments of my life was for 6 hours, just like touching one another. No orgasm, just nakedly in front of one another as a mirror, just delighting in one another. I mean, it was so profoundly erotic, and talk about rediscovering the erotic in that way. I think that we need to have more and more of those moments, so we're not just using one another to achieve orgasm.
1 in 10 women has never orgasmed, and I think that's a little underreported. And I'm doing a workshop next Friday on orgasm, and you're hitting on a lot of the principles. Like, if that's our goal and we're rushing to the outcome, and how can we get it done, get the quickest hit of dopamine, check off the box that we had sex, we're missing like so much potential for that deepening intimacy and connection. And people that I work with will often remember when they were teenagers and like sex was bad, so they couldn't have sex, they couldn't have penetration. What else would they do? What else would they explore? And how turned on and present, and like the presence that's required to presence, vulnerability, intimacy, to sit in front of your partner and touch each other. Like, it's magical, right? We're not just going on repeat of, okay, we're gonna do it and I've got to get the dishes done, or I'm in fantasy about someone else, right? Like, I'm in the future or I'm in the past, but I'm like definitely not here being fucked and being open, being like had love made to me or whatever like we're doing, but I'm not there. I'm elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I think it's so easy for people to be everywhere but where they need to be, present fully.
Yeah, and I think that we achieve that that lack of communion by a long track record of actually just being out of communion and everywhere else, right? It's very difficult to have intimate union if we're not in intimate union in the other areas of our life. So my partner and I practice radical authenticity. Just that is our practice. And there are some very specific things that we have engaged in across the years in order to achieve this place. And it looks like being fully present with one another. But in order to be fully present with one another, we've had to actually we've had to close the vaults. Most of our relationships are built on like deep underground catacombs of secrets, right? And it starts in the very beginning, like, oh, she doesn't need to know that, oh, he would probably not understand if I told him X. And so we have, maybe they start off very small, like these little vaults that we kind of keep for ourselves. And, because that place exists in our mind, we know where to put other secrets as they come up later, right? Other secrets like, oh gosh, I overspent. I'm not going to tell them. We put the secret in that vault. Over time, those vaults grow, right? They become a network of tunnels, right? Or they become a very large kind of Scrooge McDuck style money bin under our relationship, right? This huge cavern. That's a DuckTales reference, by the way, from the 80s.
Got it.
Thank you. This very large cavern of secrets. And what happens is, by the time we get to anything like sex, right, we've got this mass, this whole other world taking our mind, taking our body away from one another, right? Or it becomes like a wall between us. We're not even seeing each other. And so that practice of radical authenticity, like I would just give you two practices that we did. One of them was we told each other our entire sexual history with every sexual partner before and during our relationship with one another, and including the actions and our levels of enjoyment. So it wasn't just like, yeah, I had sexual intercourse with so and so when I was 17. It was like, no, I had just like the freaking best sex of my life. And when, I performed oral sex on her, that was just like mind blowing for me. Like we actually told each other the things we really, really appreciated and really didn't, right? In vivid detail. Second step, we then told each other every fantasy about others that we had had while in relationship to each other. Now, she was far less surprised by mine, gotta tell you, like far less surprised.
Because we know, like,
Totally.
we know, like, we can feel it when you're all of a sudden a witness to like someone else's something. We're like, ding, like, we know.
I hate that, by the way. It's so true. It's so true. We were in a crowd of people, and I mean, it was like 500 people, and she's like, her and her, they're the only two people you think of right now, right? And I'm like, stop it, right? Like you're in my brain, get out. But hers were surprising, and I got my little feelings hurt, right? Like my sweet little feelings were like, oh, you thought of him. Wow, that really, and so we had to like work through that. I got to tell you, I'll just tell you that scenario because it might be useful. She, in that whole disclosure time, she told me that she had actually fantasized about one of my best friends. And mind you, he is ridiculously good looking. Like he really is, and he's extraordinarily wealthy, and he's also really intelligent at the same time. So it's like he kind of is a triple threat, and so I get it. Like I totally get it. And when I heard that, I was like, "Fuck no, no, no!" And here's what I had to do in order to work through that intense and possessive and clawing jealousy that came over me. I asked, what's the worst that could happen? Like, what am I afraid of here? So I answered in my mind, oh, what I'm afraid of is that the fantasy moves from fantasy and then they start talking. Okay. And then what? So I played the and then what? And then what? Oh, they start talking. Something starts to develop. Oof. Okay, that's another great irrational fear. But and then what? Something develops. They get feelings. And then what? And then they have sex. Oh my God. And you know what? I wasn't being facetious. I was feeling it, like that pain that hit me as if it would hit me then. And then I said, and then what? And I'll tell you what it got to, that they liked each other so much that she left me. She left me for him in this fantasy. And that was about the worst thing I could think of. I actually started to cry as I was thinking about that. And then here's what happened. I imagined our son. I like added one layer of fuel to it. I imagined our son that we have together looking up at this man and calling him dad. And that was like the most painful thing I could think of. And then I was liberated in a moment. Because you know what I realized? I realized that I wanted my son to be happy. Like if it went all the way there, I would actually want that to be such a strong and beautiful union that he could call him dad. And then all of a sudden, what I wished was goodwill. I was like, oh my God, if I was in that moment and that happened, like all I would want would be goodwill for them. Like, and then I was able to take that goodwill and like back it out on every successive level until I came just to her having fantasized about him a couple of times. And I was like, I wish you goodwill. I am so glad that you enjoyed that. And I meant it. What a beautiful like exercise. No one had told me to do that, but that was how it unfolded for me. And it was really, really healing. The third practice I'm just going to give you that we've done is, and I would give this to anyone who really wants to deepen, masturbate in front of each other exactly as you do when you're not around each other. Like if you use porn, you use porn in that moment. If you asphyxiate or do something really interesting, you do that. So masturbate exactly as you would when you're not around each other, in front of each other, without the other's assistance. So you're just being observed. Then discuss and watch the fireworks. that is one of the most vulnerable activities in authentic union that I've ever done, for sure.
Mutual masturbation is always something that I am recommending, and I like the angle of as you would on your own.
We change it, right? Like, oh, I would never do that.
Yeah. Well, and it's the like being seen and known in your deepest authenticity, because if you're showing up like how you think they want you to masturbate, then it's not the same turn on as if you're showing up as your authentic self and they're like, ooh, I'm into it.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, there is nothing more erotic than watching someone, and this isn't just sexual, there is nothing more erotic than watching someone step into their authentic self. God, it's like the hottest thing in the world. Like the opposite of self-sacrifice is like full self-ownership. It is the most like desirable quality.
Last question about sex, and then we'll open it up to questions from everyone. What do you think, if we had to, again, generalizations? I know you're not a fan of generalizations, so you can unpack it however feels authentic to you. What do you think that men want sexually? Or what are they craving that it seems like they're not getting? And same question for women.
Yeah, most of the women who I interact with want to be fucked, right? Like, actually, like, he looked me in the eye, he did not take his eyes off of me. With his left hand, he pushed me onto the bed, he penetrated me fully, right? I'm not gonna get much more pornographic than that, but like,
Oh,
that's the
you
language.
can get very pornographic, because we had this conversation this morning.
Like, I could be totally off, and I'm just reporting on what I've encountered or heard across the years. But you know, I think the messages from the frontier that come back to me are, no, she actually wants to surrender to someone, right? Especially if she's showing up in the world as women are asked to show up in the world in assertive, aggressive, and active ways. They want to be able to surrender to someone. And that means they want someone who's going to actually assert themselves. And but here's the thing, like, they don't just want to assert themselves to like a low-level asshole. Like, they want someone who there is trust in their eyes, right? That they actually know that this person has profound, deep goodwill for them, deep kindness, right? And I think that quality of the intention is probably everything on that moment. You know, it's really interesting talking with men, and so what an odd time in the world, because a lot of times what I hear from men is like, I just want her to be tender to me, right? Like, I think it's very interesting how men often talk to me about, I want her to be tender. I want her to be kind. Um, you know, I in a lot of the work that I've done with men across the years, men uh, might be drinking a lot, turn to alcohol. They might kind of have these infinite like affairs with the outdoors and Gaia, and just very outdoorsy, whatever the thing is, or marijuana, or any kind of stuff. They're turning to things that are decreasing their inhibitions. And they're doing that, I think, in a way because they want to feel soft and tender, because so many of the places they're having to show up in life very hard, actually. Like, I don't want to bemoan the plight of the male right now, but I think a lot of men talk to me about life is pretty fucking hard, and I'm not getting any thanks for it. And you know, it's like, I think men are being put in an interesting bind. I think Jewel was the one who's saying she wanted a man who was fashionably sensitive but too cool to care, right? It was like, what a weird bind to put men in this stage. So when I hear men talk about sex, what I hear them talk about is like, oh, I want her to be tender with me. I want her to be gentle. I want it to be soft, right? Like, I don't actually think he wants to fuck her the way that she wants him to. Which, here's what's great. That means that they need to balance one another. That means they get to alternate. That means they get to communicate what they want. It's not just going to be like you're always going to do this and I'm always going to do this, right? It's going to be like, we're going to actually have to have conversations about, what do you want? When do you want it? How do you want it? Can you flex for me in that moment? Can I lean in for you in this moment? Right? Yeah. And so much of that will be negotiated, not in hour-long boardroom conversations, but more like in winks and smiles and slurps and gasps and whimpers, right? Like, we'll communicate these shorthands to one another. I think that's appropriate.
I think so too, especially the tendency to want to like get it right and have the conversation and have it perfect. And okay, so we're going to have sex like this moving forward. Like, that's not attractive. That's not intimacy. That's not like sparks and in polarity. To like learn how to communicate those things, how to be vulnerable enough to share the winks and things is kind of the key, right? To let that guard down and ask for those desires to be met.
I want to thank Rainier again for bringing his wisdom, energy, and vulnerability to the feminine mentorship. And now to my listeners, he did not skip a beat, or at least show us that he did, joining a group of elite and powerful women. It has been so beautiful to be coached by, work with Rainier. He's taught me so much and led by example. It's been beautiful to be seen by him, known by him, feel his empathy, and feel so safe to share. I definitely don't know where I would be without him. He's allowed me to relax deeper into the parts of myself that I'd like to not admit that are there, and really slow down and enjoy. So if you're interested in doing the work in the feminine mentorship, applications are opening in November. You know that I'm speaking to you. You're a little embarrassed to admit to have it so together professionally, and yet feel so alone, exhausted, and anxious personally. You're together on the outside and a little bit of a hot mess on the inside. It's okay. I've been there, and I've helped hundreds of women exactly like you. Imagine what life would be like in a room full of successful women feeling the exact same way. I see you. Let's chat. Go to www.thepleasurecollective.com/feminine mentorship to get on the wait list and set up a call with me. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Dr. Jordin Wiggins and send me a DM. Happy Friday, lovers.
Have a great week, everybody.
If you like what you heard in this episode, leave me a rating. Your support helps me get discovered by more women like you. Together, we can change the conversation around women's sexual health and pleasure for you, your partners, and generations to come.